feel anxious, slightly nervous. Never met any of you before. I'm being filmed. But those things aren't normal for me. That's kind of a one-off event, maybe a couple of times a month for me as a person. But imagine feeling like that every day you enter the office. Every time you pick the phone up, every time you enter a meeting with your colleagues. And think about kind of the impact that's going to have on you as an individual and the performance that you deliver within your organisation. And think about the effect that has on you as an individual outside of work. And that's what we're here to talk, or I'm here to talk to you about today, is the imposter phenomenon and the impact that has on your performance and your team's performance within your organisations. I'm definitely no expert. But I've learned quite a lot during this process, and we've been rolling this talk out across the country. And the more I researched into it, the more I came close to it and realised that this topic, the imposter phenomenon, really affects me. And it actually affects more individuals than you might care to have thought. And we'll come into some research into that in a bit. My name's Jon Cooney. I work at Totaljobs Group, part of Stepstone. I've been in this industry longer than I care to remember. But when the team asked me kind of what I wanted to talk about this year, they produced a number of different research reports. And usually I'm talking about fiscal decline, negative CAGRs, things that are kind of quantifiably truthful about businesses and concepts. This topic for me is kind of different to what I'd normally talk about. It's something that I didn't know affected me and is maybe deemed to be quite fluffy in some respects, but actually, once we've conducted our research and we've got some hard quantifiable data to rub up against it, I'm hopeful there's some takeaways you can take away from today and put back into your businesses and indeed your daily lives. So the imposter phenomenon, otherwise known as a kind of imposter syndrome or IP, actually affects 70% of people in the country. So 7 in 10 of your employers, are going to be feeling this kind of feeling and not quite sure how to label it. So hopefully after today you'll be able to do that. Before I get into our study, actually, there's a couple of macro themes affecting the UK economy today that I wanted to draw your attention to, and we believe IP is kind of one of the root causes. The first is the productivity crisis the UK are facing today. You've probably seen in the press there's 76% unemployment today, which is fantastic for the UK, but actually our performance of those employees is 20% behind where forecasts should be. So it's the lowest productivity level the UK has seen across all industries since records began. You work out your productivity, which I didn't know, it's something else I learned, by dividing the number of people, number of hours worked in the country by the GDP. So it's something that we've been monitoring as a country for years, and we're at the lowest point ever. The second thing is absenteeism within the workplace is its highest rate ever. So 43% of employees that we spoke to believe they have to stay late to be deemed to be doing a good job, and people earning 50k plus, it's around 58%. And again, if you're staying late or getting in early, are you being productive? What impact's that having on your home life? What impact's that having on your work life? Is that something as a business, or businesses, we need to manage within our workforces? So I'm not suggesting that both of these themes are directly correlated to the imposter syndrome, but I believe IP certainly has a big part to play in two of these macro underlying themes that your businesses and our economy are seeing today. So first of all, I want to put it on the map. I want to put it on the map for you as individuals, and I want to put it on the map for you as companies. So what is IP? What is imposter syndrome? It kind of rears its head when essentially you've got a lack of confidence, you feel like you're faking it, you feel like you're not up to a task. But particularly when you've delivered good results doing that task in the past. So you've got experience, you've got demonstrable results that you can show, but you're still questioning yourself as part of the process. It's not a clinical term, it's not diagnosed by BMA, it's more like a nuance of individual psyches. It's hard to pinpoint, and individuals will be on different varying levels of the scale of IP. But how do you spot that? How do you manage that within your businesses? And how do you look for it in the hiring process? And hopefully today we can come on to some of that information and you can take some takeaways from what we've got to show you. So it's much more than just pure self-doubt, and it often rears its ugly head at work. I did some of my own research on this onto Google, and you'll find lots of information about how IP affects you in your family life, with your friends, etc. There's very few studies related to the business world that we can find. So here at Totaljobs, we decided to perform our own study, actually. And really, that's the
I always set myself through
crux of what I wanted to share with you today. But it's all well and good listening to me. I sent, our marketing team went out to the streets, actually, and listened to some of the Joe public and what they felt about the imposter phenomenon, and this is what they had to say.
I always set myself really, really high expectations. Usually expectations that probably can't reach, but I feel like if you set them really high, then what's the word? I'd rather set an expectation that's really high than one that's like not high enough.
There were certain points where I didn't feel like I had possibly the belief of the team in my previous job that I could actually do the role that I was obviously hired for.
Still that kind of instinct that when somebody praises it to be like, oh, but it doesn't, this is missing, or it doesn't do that, or oh, but I should have.
So it's super awkward. It's like someone saying happy birthday and then you just replying back saying, yeah, you too. I definitely need to work on just saying thank you.
So that's literally outside of our building, and we asked the question, do you feel like an imposter at any point in your life? And people are kind of not sure what that question means, but when we elaborate on the question, people really opened up and really gave us quite some obvious examples of in the workplace where they're kind of feeling like a fraud. So as I said, from our research, 70% of people experience this. That's 22.5 million employees across the UK. So even if we can make a small percentile improvement by researching this topic, by putting it on the agenda of your boardrooms, it's going to make a huge differential to the GDP in this country, and therefore the productivity crisis that the UK are experiencing. So we see it as a real problem. Therefore, we conducted some research with Terry Simpkin and Kate Atkin. They're two kind of speakers on this topic, being on BBC, Forbes, etc. And we interviewed 2,000 workers across the UK, a list of questions around the imposter syndrome, imposter phenomenon. And I want to give you some of the highlights of that research today. Now, we're able to share this research with you in more detail if you'd like, by email, PDF, whatever you want. But I've just got some of the top line stuff that I thought quite interesting to share. The first piece for me was that it's kind of agnostic to seniority level. I presume that if I'm a graduate coming into a business, that I'm going to be feeling like I'm a fake or a fraud more frequently than somebody that's been in the business for 5 years. And that is the case, but only by a small percentile. So 68% of senior managers still said regularly they feel like they're not worthy. They find it difficult to accept praise. They feel like a fake and a fraud. So one of the main things I'd expect you to take away from today is if you're going to, I don't know what businesses you particularly work in, but if you're going to look at this within your organisation, don't think about it as the onboarding piece for new starters. It goes all the way through your organisation, and even your CEOs are going to be feeling like a fraud at some points. I've just been away with ours, and I kind of know which areas of our business actually isn't his stronghold. And so I'm sure he walks into traffic meetings and tech meetings where he's feeling a bit kind of open to criticism. So we interviewed the 2,000 who said, when you've made a mistake, how did you feel after it? And 38% of them said, that's good, I want to do better next time. A positive response from somebody who maybe is on the low end of the spectrum of imposter syndrome. 17% thought they were anxious, they just weren't capable enough of performing that task in the first place. So that's a high proportion of people. 12% struggle to get over it, procrastinating about what happened, thinking about how they can improve it, worrying, being anxious. 7% of those individuals that we interviewed will potentially look for another job because they just feel like they can't cope in the work environment. So the second piece to take away today, because most of this work in talent acquisition is 7% of your staff, every time they make a mistake, they're thinking, I need to get out of here. So what are we doing as companies to reassure those individuals, to give them training, to work through problems and show them that they've got a safe environment, that this isn't a time for them to look for a new career or a new job. Certainly within our organisation, I've met with our HR team, this topic hasn't been approached. In my hiring, when I was hired into the business, I wasn't tested for this. Have I been in a situation where I want to look for another job in my 2 years in the organisation? Yeah, I have. First 6 months, really hard. So I'm personally, I've experienced some of this stuff. And before researching this topic, I just thought it was something that only I was dealing with. It's not. But it's not just the individuals in your organisation you need to look at here. Yeah, there's things we can do around training that I'll come on to that can help. But actually, when you're bringing people into the organisation, how do you spot someone who's high on the imposter syndrome scale? I think that's really important. You know, if someone's playing down their achievements, yeah, well, we had a good run, but I had a great team around me. You know, without the tech team or the support I had in commercial, it never would have happened. That's fine, and I think quite a British trait where you find it difficult to accept praise, but actually if you dig deeper into that and question that candidate more, are they finding it difficult to put success at their feet? If that's the case, then you've probably got a person that's quite high on the IP spectrum. And you know, that's fine, but maybe that person needs to be dealt with in a certain way through the onboarding. Make sure we've got a safe environment. Make sure you're giving them feedback from their performance in the right way. And then also you look for words that people use in interviews. So things like dissatisfied, scared, inconspicuous, phony are all signs of people that are quite high on the IP spectrum compared to, you know, more positive, non-imposter words like proud, justified, praiseworthy, etc. You know, so when I'm interviewing, which I am at the moment, I'm actually employing some of this logic when I'm speaking to people, and I'm pushing them to see what kind of language they use when I praise them. When I say that went well, that was great, you must have been really proud of that. If they say, well, actually it wasn't me, as a salesperson who I'm hiring, that's maybe not the best trait I'm looking for. So it's added another dimension into my hiring process currently. So what are the implications to your business and your teams of IP? Firstly, 70% of people will let others take credit for their work. And so what that means is, by proxy, you're going to have people in your organisations that get pats on the back and promotions that actually don't deserve it necessarily. They're not the crux or the central point of the success of the project. Over half feel uncomfortable receiving recognition. 40% of your staff, don't forget we interviewed 2,000 people, it's quite a large audience, feel like they haven't met expectations of their current role. We all know what that feels like, I'm sure. You've all been in your jobs when you feel like you're under-delivering, and it's Monday morning and you're coming in and you're thinking, oh, okay, well 40% are feeling that today in the organisation, so looking around the room, there's nearly half of you feeling like that at some point in your working year. And again, as a business, do we do anything to manage that? Is there a safe environment where we can help people understand that you're going to go through ups and downs, there's going to be problems you can't solve, there's going to be areas of time where you need support. As a company, my company, we started to be pretty good at this actually. We have various working groups where we can soundboard ideas and get other people's views. But what are your organisations doing about that? And lastly, the big one, over a third of people felt quite anxious about their day, about their careers, about their job. Anxious people have 5% more time off work than non-anxious people. So it's just as a straight bottom line, the impact that has to your organisation if you have tens of thousands of employees. IP can really make a difference to sick days, which has an impact on productivity, etc. So, the more I delved into it, as you can start to see, the more we've got some proprietary data from these 2,000 people, the more this narrative starts to stand up in the boardroom. We've got this as far as our HR director internally now, but we hope to put this actually on the main agenda at some point within our organisation. So I thought it would be good to try and classify the types of people that IP affect. So you can start to think about, oh, I know that sort of person, oh, I'm like that, and I'm like some of these, and I'll tell you which ones. But the first we coined as the perfectionist. So this is someone who sets goals that are excessively high, goals that they're never going to achieve, so they're setting themselves out for failure at the start. We've all worked with that person that you go into the kick-off meeting and you think, that's a great story, but in reality, in 12 months, is that going to be achievable? That's this person. They know it themselves, but they're always chasing their tail throughout the whole project lifespan. Is that you? The superhuman. This is the person that pushes themselves way too hard. They're booking meetings at lunchtime. You've got that call at 6:15 with the States. This person that's maybe pushing themselves, working too hard, high levels of absenteeism in the business, and other people can't keep up with them. That alienates What's the word? Alienates, thank you. Alienates themselves from the rest of their working units and working teams. So again, I don't know if you can relate to this person, but I can think of these individuals in our organisation. This isn't me, the natural genius, unfortunately, but this person must get it right first time. Not happy to make a mistake. Listen to other people and improve. If they don't get it right first time, they're a failure in their own eyes. And so that allows self-doubt to creep in, anxiousness to creep in, and all those other things that we talked about start to rear their heads. So the natural genius is third. Fourth is the soloist. This person won't ask for help. We see this quite a lot in our IT teams, actually, because those individuals spend quite a lot of time by themselves anyhow within our organisation. The cameraman's laughing. These individuals find it difficult to put their hand up and say, I don't know the answer to that. And the last one definitely is me. It's the expert. I kind of think that I've never known enough about a topic. There's always going to be someone in the room that's smarter than me, that probably knows more about a certain theme. And I find myself feeling anxious that I might not pose a question, or if I've got to answer a question, it might not be a strong enough answer, because there are other people in the room that are experts in certain domains. So they're kind of the five, I think, five kind of personality types that if you were going to do something within your organisation, that you could potentially build some training, some coaching around, and maybe segment your teams into those different tribes and build out kind of, visualisation plans to help them in their day jobs. So overall, increased stress, increased anxiety, poor mental health. I think poor mental health is one of the key themes running through all of our organisations today. And so I'm sure your businesses are doing things around that, but is IP part of that consideration today? It probably isn't, is the reality. And so I'd encourage you to at least talk to your HR teams and consider putting this on the agenda. So you're probably thinking, thanks John, you've kind of given me another problem, another thing to think about, and another excuse for my team not to perform, or whatever it might be. Well, there's certain things that I think we can do about it, and I just wanted to give you a couple of hints and tips that we've taken on at TJ, Totaljobs, and potentially you can learn from. The first thing is defining it within your organisation. If you're a strong tech organisation or a strong sales organisation, you're going to have people experiencing IP in different ways. So put it on the agenda, understand how it's affecting your business is the first thing to do. Secondly is mentor programs. You probably have lots of these running through your organisations, most do, but actually having cross-matrix ones where you've got individuals understanding the downstream impact of their actions in other departments really helps people understand their value in an organisation. Just having the person 3 jobs ahead of you telling you you're doing a good job doesn't really work in this respect for IP, but having the guy kind of on the factory floor, might be a factory supervisor, what have you, saying that the products are working as they should be, actually really helps. So I think having that cross-matrix mentor program, and we've employed this at TJ, is really starting to see some benefits. There's loads of other benefits to doing that, by the way, but certainly for IP, it's something that we found works. Recognise their personal strengths. So this one is around, when you hire somebody, you hire them off a job description. A year and a half into that job, do you get that same job description out and see what that person is doing? Probably not. Actually, they're doing a load of things outside of what they were employed to do and why they got the job. But if you compartmentalise their success in those 2 areas, it becomes quite clear that the reason they were employed was to do X, Y, and Z, and they're doing that really, really well. It's the stuff that are edge cases where people start to struggle because it's extending themselves and they're going into realms that they're not necessarily qualified to deliver on. And so by splitting that apart, it's quite clear you can start to give people praise and demonstrate their success in their current roles. And the last piece was around really understanding where individuals are struggling. So this is pretty 101 stuff, but if it's certain areas, mixing with teams or reporting, whatever it might be, building out plans to support those individuals in the areas where they're not feeling confident. The areas they're not feeling confident might be the areas they're not KPI'd on actually, but it's the things that are affecting their mind, their psyche, making them feel anxious. So by posing this question, you might find there's 2 or 3 areas that pop up that you weren't going to focus on in their development plans already. So I think they're the kind of 4 themes that we would suggest embedding into your organisation across those 5 personality types if you're really going to take IP seriously. The last piece was around actually a very clear personal development plan for each individual. So they've got very clear diagnostic of what it is they're due to deliver and ensuring you're giving them solid feedback and praise in the right way. I read a BuzzFeed example recently where in at number 16 out of the top 100 how to annoy a British person is to praise them publicly. Sending the all-staff email to say that Grant did a great job delivering on a certain project might not be the best way to praise an individual. So building out kind of a bespoke kind of plan on what they're going to do, how you're going to measure it, and then how you're going to congratulate them is kind of important. So, good. Kind of got just a roundup really from this. As I said, this isn't a presentation where there's a graph with CAGRs with Boston Consulting level research. This is from 2,000 people. It's the only research I could find online about this topic in terms of in accordance with the business space. So it's a starting point, I would say. But hopefully from this, you guys can take it back and start thinking about how it impacts your organisations. And maybe we can start to do something about it as a workforce in the UK. And then maybe we can start to see an impact on the GDP and productivity crisis. Main reason being, 70% of us experience this. Out of 2,000 people we interviewed, 7 out of 10 said, yeah, I can feel some of that in my day job. If you're seeing high presenteeism in certain divisions that you work in, huge amount of anxiousness in employees that are setting themselves goals that are too high, just won't achieve, all the signs that we've gone through, there may be IPs at play here, and maybe you need to take a different way of managing that with your employees. We went through offering kind of objective feedbacks, clear targets, all the stuff that's personal to those individuals, and make sure you're communicating them one-on-one, not necessarily in a group. If you don't do it, then 4.5k a year per employee is the problem. So lack of productivity adds up to that. That's ONS stats. So there's a real bottom line issue around productivity in your organisations today. IP's not being considered. It might be something that you could do to improve your line manager's performance, improve retention, improve the well-being of your employees in your organisations. So next time, kind of, either you're feeling like this, you can see someone's feeling like this, that they're no expert, they shouldn't be standing up here, they're struggling to take congratulations. Maybe there's more at play than just kind of momentary self-doubt. Maybe IP is something that you need to consider. Thanks for listening. I hope you found that interesting and made your brains think a little bit. And I'm open to any questions you might have on the topic.